Good day, everybody. King of Misfits here. It's been a while. It's been over a year since I've been live, which is crazy to think. So, I don't know what this is going to turn out like. Don't know how long it's going to be. Probably not very long. Hopefully, I just don't shut it down in the middle of it. But yeah, what I want to talk about today, it's kind of in regards to not being the middle ground guy. That's not what I'm trying to be here. Not trying to be middle of ground guy. What I'm trying to do is point out weaknesses in arguments on both sides and blatant falsities. Okay. And yeah. The topic today is going to be the Book of Esther, and specifically the day of Purim, or Purim days. So that's like March 2nd and 3rd. And we all know that this March 2nd and 3rd of 2026, there was a blood moon and a big bombing campaign that took place. And in that, obviously, you have a lot of people that are celebrating it, Zionists and whatnot, and Jews alike, and whoever their allies are throughout the earth. And then you have everybody else who is not very excited about what's taking place, who is, a little bit perturbed, right? Considering that the whole world is being pulled into this World War III. It's funny, we don't really know or see much in regards to what's actually going on, different theories and whatnot of what's taking place. Like I've heard that Bibi Netanyahu is not even, what's that? I hear Bibi Netanyahu might not even be alive. Is that true? No, nobody knows. A lot of stuff can be taking place and is taking place. And what's true and what's false is really hard to gauge at this point, because there's not a lot of stuff that's getting out there. But there is stuff that's coming out, and I don't really want to comment on a lot of that. But what I do want to comment on is, like I say, the Purim thing, and the whole Book of Esther. You had that rabbi on, I don't know what it was, KTLA or MSNBC, or I don't know, whatever the news. It wasn't CNN, I know that. I don't think it was Fox. But anyways, the rabbi was on there, and he's talking about that, and 3,000 years ago, there was a negative Iranian peoples, and so on this day we celebrate Purim and pass around gifts. So happy Purim, right? And he passes gifts around, and everybody's like, "Oh wow, yay, Purim, yay!" Because the rabbi goes on to say that Haman, the plot against the Jews, and that he was some Persian, and therefore, because of that plot and the exchange that happened between Mordecai and the king and with Esther, that the decree of being able to slaughter all the Jews was flipped around, and Haman the Persian and all these Persians all were slaughtered by the Jews. They were allowed just to go through Persia, the kingdom, the provinces, and just slaughter Persians. The problem with this is that it's not true, first of all. Okay. I mean, we'll get to that, but it's not true in the sense of how the rabbi is explaining it. He doesn't even have the story right. And the worst part about it is that everybody that opposed Zionism, that isn't a Christian, that wants to latch on to Gnosticism or neo-paganism or, bread tube atheism, whatever, Reddit atheism, they all want to point and say, oh yeah, look, it's see, the Bible condones the mass slaughter of the Iranians today, right? Because this Jew said it, and he gave a gift on the news, and he proclaimed it, and then they'll be like, and besides, that didn't happen. It's a made up story. Haman wasn't real. There's no Persian records of Haman. The Persian? Well, that's because he wasn't Persian, first of all. Okay? He wasn't Persian. All right? There are people living in Persia that are not Persian. The empire is expanded, and it's got a lot of territories, and those territories were not always Persian. They were formerly whoever. Okay? But those people are still living in the provinces. They're just in conquered provinces, right? Obviously, in like Jerusalem and whatnot, the cities and towns of Israel, most of those places were left in rubble, in ruin, and destitute. But in the provinces, there were obviously Hebrews living all throughout them. And specifically in Esther, it's talking about Jews. Okay. Now, what is the whole basis that Haman never existed? Well, there's little to no archaeological evidence pertaining to. That's what we hear. And I'll just say this, like, there's a lot of lack of evidence for a lot of things in history, right? When you're reading history, when you're thinking about these things, there's a bit of faith that has to go along with it. Like, like the theory of evolution, how much faith these prognosticators of no creator, no intelligent design, no purpose to anything, just a bunch of random chances, mutations, and so on. And magically, billions of years later, we have what we have today. That requires much more faith to believe that than it ever does to believe what the Bible says. Okay, and they say that the Bible is an anti-science book, that it condemns science. Well, no, it doesn't, because science is just understanding and knowing creation. It's the understanding and knowledge of creation. Okay. A formula is made by somebody 4,000 years ago. Did that person invent the formula, or did they see something in the created universe, the world that we live in, that has a pattern, and were they able to associate that pattern in other things and come to a mathematical equation? That's pretty smart of them to do. But again, the equation, the material was always there. The equation even was always there, but it took a certain amount of digging and searching to come up with it. That doesn't mean that it was created. It was something observed and recorded and repeated over and over again to come to a conclusion. Then, this is the thing. This is the answer to this. Does that now exclude God from the equation? Or does it just further prove how all-powerful, omniscient, omnipresent, all-knowing that God is? I would say it does. Yes. Whenever you look and you see throughout the earth, you see whether it's simple or complex systems, those systems had to be designed in order to fit with the action or the motion of that thing, right? Whether it's a jellyfish or it's a human, okay? They're what's made up of the human and what's made up of the jellyfish are that specific to those things themselves. Okay. A human cannot be a jellyfish, and a jellyfish cannot be a human. You could say that there's people out there that look like jellyfish and they have the brain capacity of jellyfish, but that doesn't mean that they were jellyfish or they are becoming jellyfish. Okay. All that means is that there are specific designs and makeups of different species, different created beings that are specific to them. And then when you find a pattern that emerges, somewhere else unrelated, does that mean that a human was a lizard at one time? If there's something similar between humans and lizards, if there's some element in their makeup that is similar one to another, does that mean that they came one from another? Or does that mean that there's just a common creator? No, there's a common creator, of course. There's a common creator. Anyways, off of that tangent. Evidence, archaeological evidence, there's not a lot of evidence out there for a lot of things that we take at face value, right? There's a lot of things that they have very little evidence on, and yet they write whole books about the thing, right? They have very little fossils of particular dinosaurs, and yet they tell you exactly when they lived, where they lived. Well, obviously based on where they found the bones, but that may or may not be true, depending on how far it got carried by the flood. What they ate, what their hunting patterns is, what their paternal proclivities were, like all these different things. They can break down this 18 million year old creature somehow, but they can't tell you how it got there. They can't tell you where it went, right? They can't tell you anything concrete, but they can hypothetically make up a whole story, a whole fantasy around the thing. So the things that they accuse Bible believers of doing is the very thing that they practice every day, which is using their vain imaginations. They're filthy dreamers, right? Because the whole purpose behind critics of the Bible, although they may have some personal grievances, which is fine, it always ends up going back to God's mean, God's hateful. How can a loving God do this? If God created the world like this, then how can we see this today? There's all these different things that they will use to speak about the morality of God and input their own idea of what morality is or what truth is and insert it, as if we're just supposed to take them for their word and believe everything that they say. Okay? So their argument and their standpoint is one of faith, just like mine is one of faith. So am I ever going to convince you? No. I'm never going to convince you if you have made up in your mind something. Okay? when God sears someone's conscience because they had God, they knew him at one time, but retained him not in their knowledge, but instead followed after their lusts and their filthy dreams and imaginations, until the point where God said, okay, you're beyond, right? You've reached the point where you've blocked your mind from ever receiving any truth. So, anyways, while there's no direct archaeological artifact or extra biblical text that explicitly names Haman, son of Hamadatha, there is significant circumstantial and contextual evidence that aligns with the biblical account in the book of Esther. Persepolis treasury tablets, these Elamite records from Persia era, mention an official name, Haymana, which some scholars suggest is linguistic match for Haman. Haymana, Haymandatha, it's similar family names. While Haman's name is elusive, tablets have been found mentioning his father, Haymandatha, the names corresponding to his sons, Aradatha and Aradai, listed as holding official government roles. Contemporary figures, cuneiform texts from Babylon and Persia archives mention an individual named Marduka or Marduku, widely understood by some historians to be the biblical Mordecai. Persian court structure, the Elephantine papyri, 5th century BC, confirmed that Jewish communities lived and faced political hostility with Persian territories, mirroring this setting of Haman's decree. This particular part is interesting because, one second here, I just want to check something. How come show on the stream chat, this isn't even real? Why can't I see if anybody's actually into chat? Customize. I don't know. That's why it's been so long since I've done anything that I often forget how to do the basic things, like see if there's anybody actually watching or engaging. There's two I see. Anyways, I'll get back to it. No point wasting time looking at that. I'd like to be able to see the chat. I just, for some reason, can't seem to find it. I don't want the demo. New comments will be displayed here. Okay, maybe that's it. All right. So, the Elephantine papyri, 5th century BC, from the Jewish communities, confirmed that the Jewish communities lived and faced potential hostility with Persian territories, mirroring the setting of Haman's decree. Okay, now, the Elephantine papyri, this is what is important here, okay? The book of Esther, if you read the book of Esther, you will notice something particular about it. You'll notice that there's no mention of God in it ever. There's very, very little spiritual reference going on that would link the book of Esther with the rest of the Old Testament. Why is that? Well, growing up and even as an adult, even today, if you look up the book of Esther and, you look up any studies on it, you'll constantly see that people say, well, the book of Esther never specifically or directly mentions God, but you can tell that God's fingerprints are all over the book because of his, protection and overseeing of the Jews and their safety and the deliverance of them from their enemies. Okay? That's
one way to look at it, and I thought that for a long time, but I also always, I could never shake when I would read the Book of Esther. I thought this book is like, it's different than the other books. And what I've come to understand is that Jews, okay, and it's been a working understanding. Jews in Persia during the time of Esther were largely assimilated into the surrounding culture, leading to a secular feel in the Book of Esther, which notably lacks explicit mentions of God, prayer, or the temple. While many lived in the diaspora, they faced threats from assimilation, and potential persecution is seen by Haman's plot. Assimilation. Many Jews, including those in the capital of Susa, adopted Persian customs, culture, and social habits, as indicated by the description of the banquet in the Book of Esther. The Book of Esther is considered unique within the Tanakh Old Testament because it does not directly reference God, faith, or religious rituals, focusing instead on Jewish survival and identity in a foreign land. Cultural tension. Despite their assimilation, they were still recognized as a distinct group with different laws, as noted by Haman in the Book of Esther. The story occurs during the Persian exile, in the time period between the initial return of the Jews under Zerubbabel and the later return under Ezra and Nehemiah. That's also key to know, okay? Okay, now, something else I asked here. The Jews in Persia during the time of Esther, circa 483, 473, were primarily descendants of the kingdom of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin, the southern kingdom, who had been carried into captivity by Nebuchadnezzar. However, the term Jews in the Book of Esther generally refers to all the remaining people of Israel scattered throughout the 127 provinces of the Persian Empire, rather than excluding other tribes by definition. Okay? Now, I just want to make a little note on where that source that I just read comes from. Oh, it comes from Chabad. Okay? It comes right from Chabad.org. Okay? So isn't that convenient that they would lump all of Israel throughout all 127 provinces into just the term Jews? Now, anywhere else in the Bible, did they ever differentiate Jewish versus Judah, Judean versus Benjamin versus Manasseh versus Ephraim versus Dan versus Zebulon versus Levi versus what? It always differentiates them. Okay? The only time it's not a differentiation is when someone outside of Israel is maybe referring to them, and they lump them all in as being Jews. Just like today, the word Jew is synonymous for Israel, which is a nation that was reborn in 1948, 1949 after World War II, subsequently from the birthing, the original conception of the Balfour Declaration during World War I. Okay, you fast forward, and after World War II, the Jews are back in the land. We're fulfilling prophecy, guys. Now let's not let's not consider the fact that we literally walked all these things into existence. We forced all these things into existence. Let's just forget about the fact that we're forcing all this to happen. Okay? Let's just forget about that. That doesn't mean anything. Right? No. It means a lot, actually. It means a lot when, you see, the Bible will tell you, okay, this is going to happen. All right? But when the Bible tells you that this is going to happen, that doesn't mean that, well, I guess I'm going to be part of that thing happening to make it happen because I've got to fulfill what the Bible says. The Bible, God, doesn't need you to participate in the thing that he's telling you is going to happen. If there's a antichrist that's going to come and reign from a third temple, okay, and we're specifically warned about the antichrist, it's not our job to help bring the antichrist to power, to bring the third temple and the end of days into our periphery. It's not our job to do that. That's antichrist, the god of forces, literally, as mentioned in the Bible. Primary tribes. Here's the breakdown of the tribal situation. Primary tribes. The core of the population consisted of the tribe of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin, along with the Levites, right? And that's the only tribes that you'll ever hear about today, but regardless. Esther and Mordecai. Mordecai is explicitly identified as a Benjamite. In traditional interpretations suggest Esther was from the same tribe, the lost tribes. While the Assyrians had exiled the 10 northern tribes in 722 BCE, over 200 years before Esther, the Persian Empire was vast, spanning the areas where those tribes had been settled. Over the generations, the distinctions between the tribes had begun to blur in the diaspora. They began to blur during the diaspora, and the religion of the Jews came to being during the Babylonian captivity. Okay? And so, yeah, of course, they're looking at, we're going to unite all of Israel under Jewry. Okay? Well, that's the traditions of the Jews. That's not the Old Testament. Okay? And the book of Esther, it doesn't mention anything about God. It doesn't mention anything about Moses, the temple. It doesn't mention anything about anything. The only thing it mentions is about Jews is the feasts that they had afterwards and how they were glad and how that they would remember Purim for time immemorial. Okay, so what is the book of Esther if God's not even mentioned in it? The book of Esther is an historical book. That's why it's in the historical section. Okay, see if I can do all these off. You got Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Okay, that's your 5 books of Moses. You got Joshua, Judges, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther. And those are your history books. Okay. After that, then you got your wisdom and poetry. You got Job. Is Job part of the history? Or is it part of I think it's part of the wisdom and poetry. You got Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel, Daniel. Those are the major prophets. Okay. Once you hit Isaiah, that's start of the major prophets. Then you got Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi. Okay. The book of Esther is a historical book. Okay. It is regarding a specific time in history when the Jews were living in the kingdom of the Persians within the provinces, much like, they're throughout the whole world today, scattered. And what it was about was not about their ties to the Old Testament. It's just chronicling a particular time during the Persian Empire when a bunch of secular Jews living in Persia figured out a way to destroy their enemies. That's what it is. And then you say, well, what? Haman, the Persian, and they killed all these Persians, and now they're justifying the war with Iran because it's an old conflict, and they're just destroying their ancient enemies, the Persians. Has nothing to do with the Persians. Okay? By the time of Esther, the survivors of the exile, regardless of their original tribal affiliation, were collectively known as Yehudim, Jews. Yeah, by that time, maybe by their enemies known as Jews, or by anybody else outside of Israel, they might call them Jews, right? So that's a misidentification, but it serves the Jews' purpose, right? Because it makes them the be-all, end-all of Israel. Therefore, while the majority of the Judean Benjamite descent, the designation Jews in the Esther narrative represents the broader community of scattered Israelites. Yet it doesn't specify that. Meanwhile, in the book of Nehemiah, it specifically specifies and differentiates. Okay, we'll get into that later. I've read that before, but it's good to read again because it's very very important with what we talk about today. The men of Judah, Judeans, refers to the people of the southern kingdom, largely descendants of the tribe of Judah. Judaism is the religious system derived from the southern kingdom's traditions, particularly after the Babylonian exile and the formalization of laws by figures like Judah the Prince in 3rd century AD. Definition: men of Judah refers to a specific tribe lineage, while religion of the Jews, Judaism, is a belief system, cultural, and religious practice. Origin: Judah is one of the 12 tribes of 12 sons of Jacob. The religion, Judaism, developed over time, particularly after the Babylonian exile. They didn't practice Judaism before the exile. Okay? They followed the Old Testament. They followed the laws of Moses. Okay? And they're still practicing Judaism today. That's why when you end off the Old Testament and then you wind up in the New Testament, it's Jews, different political classes and groups of Jews, the Sanhedrin, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Essenes, the Zealots, right? You have the rabbis, right? And the rabbis, they come out of one of these upper classes that you have to be part of. It is nothing. You look at New Testament Judaism compared to Old Testament Hebrews, and it's not the same at all. Yeah, they kind of wear a veil of it. They kind of, garner an appearance of it. They say all the things and they refer back and everything like that. But that is just an ends to justify their means of their control over the people. Okay? So you got to think, for 2,000 years from the time of Christ, you've had rabbis lying to their people, cradle to grave, teaching them lies. teaching them how to be antichrists, teaching them that they are gods and that they should be worshipped as a people, that they are different than everybody else, as if Abraham sprung out of the dirt by God himself in the same manner as Adam. And he said, this is a new man called Abraham, and his seed is blessed above all mankind because they are different and wholly separated from the rest of the earth. Is that what it was? No, it wasn't. We can read the Old Testament and we know that that's not the case. Definitions. Origin, scope. The tribe of Judah was part of the 12 tribes of Israel, whereas the religion of Judaism often encompasses all Jewish people, regardless of their tribal affiliation. I want you to understand that. The tribe of Judah was one of the 12 tribes of Israel, whereas the religion of Judaism often encompasses all Jewish peoples, regardless of their original tribal affiliation. Okay? So it's a religion within a religion? No. It's a break off of a religion, true religion, and it is its own tradition, and it has built off of that. And for the last 2,000 years, 3,000 years, the rabbis have written volumes and upon volumes of books where they can get around all of God's laws and do whatever they want and get away with it because God said so. And in doing so, they make God's name stink amongst the Gentiles and cause Gentiles to say, well, I'm not serving the God of Israel if this is what he's about, right? And it causes Christians to fall away from their faith, let alone the influence, okay? The influence and the subversion that the Jewish religion has caused in our world, that's caused many Christians to fall away from their faith. Now, you are responsible for your faith, your own faith. But I'm not going to sit there and also say that there isn't forces that are selectively targeting people on specific things in order to tear them away from their relationship with God, whether that be some sort of vice or lust or money or unbelief or imaginations and vanity, whatever it is. They're playing the role of Satan in Job. Okay? And that's why it's difficult, because they are to blame for their part, and we are to blame for our part in going along with what they're doing. And when we hear a rabbi talk about the book of Esther and Purim and the destruction of the Iranian people today, and talking about Haman being a Persian and that it's the enemy of the Jews like Amalek and Esau to be blotted out from under heaven, to be destroyed off the face of the earth, to annihilate them, then we have a problem. We have a major problem, because if I was to say that I had the right to go and conquer the land and destroy everybody out from underneath it, then I would be called all sorts of things. Okay? I would be called all sorts of bad names. Okay? I mean, I guess if I was in that position where I was doing that, I guess I wouldn't care. The main point would be that if there's ever a time where we're allowed to, God allows us to let loose and reclaim things, here's the key point. You don't stop until the job's done. You don't stop until the job is done. You keep on going until you've purged it all. Because that's always been the mistake. It's always been the mistake, is that you don't go far enough. You get tired and you need a rest and you want to enjoy the comforts. You've got enough. Nope. You take that rest and the enemy, he regroups and he plans a different type of an attack, a more secretive attack, a more subversive attack. So the men of Judah, right? 12 tribes of Israel, whereas a religion often encompasses all Jewish people, regardless of the original tribal affiliation. It also encompasses anybody who wants to convert to Judaism. And then they call themselves Jews, but they're not men of Judah. So then spiritually, they become grafted in somehow, but they're not. But they are. You see how that works? Oh, you can join Judaism, but you'll never be a Jew. Right? I mean, that's understandable. You'll never be a Jew in their eyes ethnically. But if you are serving them by proselytizing and becoming a Jew, then they're okay with that. You'll be one of the slaves. Okay? The men of Judah survived the destruction of the kingdom, and their traditions were later formalized into Judaism. That is not true. Okay? That's not true. Contextual distinction. Judeans refers to people from the kingdom of Judah. Judaism refers to the religious practice of Jews. Tribal versus universal. The men of Judah are a specific tribal group, whereas the religion is often global community of believers. Again, that's how they always like to frame it, right? Oh no, it's a global community of believers, but we're going to have our own ethno-state over here. But no one else can have an ethno-state. Everyone else has to live with this universal method, but we're going to live with this tribal method that isn't really tribal because we can't date ourselves back to the actual children of Judah, right? Or maybe any of the tribes of Israel for that matter. So the Elephantine Papyri and the secular Jews in Persia, in the province where Xerxes reigned over, or not where he reigned over, but where the Book of Esther takes place, okay, in that province. So Haman is son of Hamandatha, who was a Agagite. Okay? Agagite. What's an Agagite? Well, whenever in the Old Testament you hear ite, okay, is all that is your last name and that particular branch of people that came from that name. Okay? I'm a Branscombe. That's my line. The line Branscombe will continue until there's no male Branscombes. Okay? But then that line might form up with another line, and then they're called the whatevers, right? And then they continue on. So on and so forth. You have a person, an original person, whose name becomes a people. Okay? You have a original person who has a family. That family branches off into, from that tree into more branches. And they keep branching off. And then eventually from Branscombe, you'll have another name, right? And then maybe another name. But those lineages all get recorded as people. Like you can look up the name Branscombes and you can see that is a people throughout Canada, the United States, and the British Isles. You will see that, Okay, so Haman, son of Hamandatha, the Agagite, Hamandatha was a Agagite. What's an Agagite? Well, the height, okay, that's the end of it. So what's the first word? Agag. Agag. Who was King Agag? Well, King Agag was an enemy of Israel back in the day. So before anything to do with Jews. Okay, this is before they were even called Jews. In fact, let's just you have to pardon me, guys. Like, I haven't done this in a while. And not that I was good when I did it. But what was I gonna say? What was I looking for? I was looking up something. I was looking up what I wanted for Samuel. I got that. And then I started doing stuff while I was trying to talk, and then I lost my train of thought. Crap. Sorry, guys. Let's just go to 1 Samuel. So Agag was a king. Okay. Who was he a king of? Agag was a Amalekite king. Huh. Okay. So who are the Amalekites? Well, the Amalekites were enemies of the children of Israel when they came out of Egypt and they were going to enter the promised land. Okay. But before then, they even had, or after that, even, they had beef in the time when Israel was established. The tribes were in their own lots and they were developing. This is after the book of Judges, and you have the prophet Samuel. Okay. Now, 1 Samuel chapter 14, it came to pass upon a day that Jonathan the son of Saul said unto the young man that bears armor, come and let us go over to the Philistines' garrison that is on the other side. But he told not his father. And Saul tarried in the uttermost part of Gibeah under the pomegranate tree, which is in Migron, and the people that were with him were about 600 men. And Ahiah, the son of Ahitub, and Ichabod's brother, Ichabod, that's Ichabod, that name is somebody had a son and they called him Ichabod, and it was like and it was not for good reasons, and I can't remember it right now. Ichabod's brother, the son of Phinehas, there we go. Phinehas, the son of Eli, the Lord's priest in Shiloh, wearing an ephod, and the people knew not that Jonathan was gone. And between the passages by which Jonathan sought to go over unto the Philistines' garrison, there was a sharp rock on the one side and a sharp rock on the other side. And the name of one was Bozez, and the name of the other was in the forefront of this. Let's go down here. I won't actually get to what I want to read. Huh. Apparently I'm not in the right chapter. How did that happen? Thought I had it. Anyways, I'm just gonna say it. Okay. So the Amalekites, okay, under King Agag, okay, they went to war with Saul. Okay. Saul's army took the Amalekites, and they took spoil, they took everything, and they had King Agag, hostage, basically. And Samuel came around and he's like, why is all this stuff still breathing? Basically, when you were told to utterly destroy them. And King Agag says to Samuel, surely the anger is past. And Samuel takes a sword and he hacks King Agag to pieces. Okay. And he's quite mad about it. He's quite upset about the situation. Let's just look at it. Samuel kills Agag. Oh yeah, that's I was reading and I went back a chapter before because I was looking up some stuff. So in Samuel, 1 Samuel chapter 15, we'll go down to verse. Now let's just read from the start. Samuel also said unto Saul, the Lord sent me to anoint thee to be king over his people, over Israel. Now therefore hearken them to the voice of the words of the Lord. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, I remember that which Amalek did to Israel, how he laid wait for him in the way when he came up from Egypt. Now go and smite Amalek and utterly destroy all that they have and spare them not, but slay both man and woman, infant and suckling, ox and sheep, camel and ass. Okay, so we've heard that exact phrase being spouted by Zionists and Jews today, by Bibi Netanyahu, right? Wanting you to, 4,000 years later to keep that fire burning in your heart so that in 2026, you can utterly waste and destroy all of Amalek. Okay. Now it's weird because like Amalek, it can just be, he can be this guy, it can be that guy, it can be this place, it can be that place. It's Iran's today, it's America tomorrow, it's all of Christianity the next day, right? It's whatever they need it to be at the time. Okay. Thus saith the Lord of hosts. And Saul gathered the people together and numbered them in Telaim, 200,000 footmen and 10,000 men of Judah. And Saul came to the city of Amalek and laid wait in the valley. And Saul said unto the Kenites, go, depart, get ye down from among the Amalekites, lest I destroy you with them. The Kenites, they have a relationship with Israelites that goes back. And so do the Amalekites. Okay. The other important thing to know is that these people are all family. They're all related. Now, Amalek, the Amalekites they're not of the 12 tribes, but they're from the same people, quite literally. Okay. A different branch. Okay. But part of the same tree, irregardless. Okay. Lest I destroy you with them, for ye showed kindness to all the children of Israel when they came up out of Egypt. So the Kenites departed from among the Amalekites. So they're like, no, we don't want to have any beef with you with this whole thing, this old beef that goes way back. And Saul smote the Amalekites from Havilah until thou comest to Shur, that is over against Egypt. And he took Agag, the king of the Amalekites, alive and utterly destroyed all the people with the edge of the sword. But Saul and the people spared Agag and the best sheep and the oxen, the fatlings and the lambs and all that was good, and would not utterly destroy them, but everything that was vile and refuse that they destroyed utterly. Then came the word of the Lord unto Samuel, saying, it repenteth me that I have set up Saul to be king, for he has turned back from following me, and hath not performed my commandments. And it grieved Samuel, and he cried unto the Lord all night. Samuel rose up early to meet Saul in the morning. It was told Samuel, saying, Saul came to Carmel, and behold, he set him up a place and is gone about and passed on and gone down to Gilgal. And Samuel came to Saul and said unto him, Blessed be thou of the Lord. I have performed the commandment of the Lord. And Samuel said, What meaneth then this bleating of the sheep in mine ears and the lowing of the ox which I hear? Saul said, Thou have brought them from the Amalekites, for the people spared the best of the sheep and of the oxen to sacrifice unto the Lord thy God, and the rest we have utterly destroyed. Then Samuel said to Saul, Stay, and I will tell thee what the Lord hath said to me this night. And he said unto him, Say on. Samuel said, When thou wast little in thine own sight, wast thou not made the head of the tribes of Israel, and the Lord anointed thee king over Israel? Yes. And the Lord sent thee on a journey and said, Go and utterly destroy the sinners, the Amalekites, and fight against them until they be consumed. Wherefore then didst thou not obey the voice of the Lord, but didst fly upon the spoil, and didst evil in the sight of the Lord? The Lord said unto Samuel, Yea, I have obeyed the voice of the Lord, and have gone the way which the Lord sent me, and have brought Agag, the king of Amalek, and have utterly destroyed the Amalekites. But the people took of the spoil sheep and oxen, the chief of the things which should have been utterly destroyed, to sacrifice unto the Lord thy God in Gilgal. Samuel said, Hath the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to hearken than the fat of rams. Okay, I'm going to stop right here. So, whoa, God's really unreasonable. Wow, how can a loving God do this? Oh, no. Okay. So God knows the beginning from the ending. All right. And if the Amalekites are so bent on destroying the Israelites, which again is an old family blood feud that is really initiated by the Amalekites themselves, and we'll see where exactly that feud comes from. Okay, because it's very important to know where it comes from. It's very important to know that it comes from them. It's very important to know that as times pass, ideas set in and take hold, and they become movements. Okay, and it becomes the path of a particular nation to carry out these specific things. Okay, so they were determined to destroy the Israelites, so God is determined that they must be destroyed. Okay, so it's just what you wanted to do to another is actually going to be what happens to you. Right? Is that a concept that people are unfamiliar with? Right? You do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Okay? Well, the Amalekites want to destroy Israel. So therefore, they want to do that onto Israel, so Israel will do it onto them. Right? It doesn't just work for those that believe in God, right? It's a universal law. Okay. The other thing is when God gives a command, okay, when Abel and Cain brought forth their offerings to God, Abel obeyed God and gave him the first fatling of his flock and offered it to God. And God was pleased with that because he did exactly what God had told him to. He was a keeper of sheep. Therefore, that was his thing. That's what God told him to do. Now, Cain, he was doing his own thing. Okay? Cain was doing the farmer thing, which is fine and all, okay? But that's not what God asked Cain to do. And so rather than bring God what God wants, Cain's like, no, I'm going to grow my really good vegetables, and I'm going to bring them as my token of my success that I'm going to give freely to you, God. Okay? That's the whole idea. And God's like, yeah, I didn't want that. I told you what I wanted, and you went out and did this other thing anyways. Okay? And then Cain's like, oh, mad, and he goes away, and in his anger, he kills his brother Abel, because Abel did what he was told to do and was praised for it. Cain was chastised for not obeying, and he got angry and sought revenge for it. Just like the Amalekites are seeking revenge for something that they have been wrongly punished for, they would say. Okay? And what is that exactly? One must think about this. So, and back to doing what God told you to do. If God told you to go and destroy every man, woman, and child, and every creeping thing, everything, don't take any spoil, no booty, destroy it all. And then you decide to go in and kill all of the people, but keep the king and keep the best sheep and lambs and goats and cows and the finest things. Like, you decide to keep all those things, the materials, and the evil king, but you killed all of the people and thought, well, we'll just sacrifice this stuff to God and he'll be pleased with that. That's not what God wanted. God said, you need to kill all of these people. And if you're gonna kill all these people, I don't want any of the spoil given to me. Okay? I didn't ask for it. I'm telling you what to do. I'm not asking for any reward from this. You've been given an order to do. I'm not looking for my reward in it when I told you to destroy everything. Right? God's very specific, and he means what he says. And so because they did what they did, God was angry. He said, that I'm sorry that I ever made Saul king. You say that's pretty harsh, but that's a pretty basic order that all the people were there to witness Saul not doing, Saul the anointed, not doing what God had told him to do. Therefore, Samuel is saying, God has rejected you. You've rejected the word of the Lord. Therefore, the Lord hath rejected thee from being king over Israel. And when he went to turn away, Saul grabbed a hold of his mantle, and it rent. And he said, the Lord hath rent the kingdom of Israel from thee this day, and hath given it to a neighbor of thine that is better than thou. We all knew that would be David. And also the strength of Israel will not lie nor repent, for he is not a man that he should repent. Then he said, I've sinned. Ye honor me now, I pray thee, before the elders of my people and before Israel, and turn again with me, that I may worship the Lord thy God. So now Saul is pleading with Samuel, right? Don't do this to me in front of all the people. Like, forgive me and let me do what I'm supposed to do, and at least carry on, kind of thing, right? And so Saul did that. Then said Samuel, bring ye hither to me Agag, the king of the Amalekites. And Agag came unto him delicately. And Agag said, surely the bitterness of death is past. And Samuel said, as the sword hath made women childless, so shall thy mother be childless among women. And Samuel hewed Agag in pieces before the Lord in Gilgal. I see that we have Gary Galuska and Marie Rejoice in Jesus. Good to see you guys. It's been a while. Hope you all are doing well. As you can hear, there's water running down pipes right now. So everybody's up from their naps and laundry is commencing. And this is not convenient for streaming to constantly hear water running down a pipe. So I'm going to end it right here. We'll leave off right here and start off from this point later on. I hope that you understood the things I'm saying. Hope that I made some points clear. Let me know in the comments down below. Comment on the stream. Watch it and tell me your thoughts. I'm going to continue on this because there's more to talk about here, but it's time that I got to shut it down. I don't have a lot of time to do these things. And I picked a time to try to get in at least an hour, which we've done successfully. Hope everybody's doing well out there considering the mess that this world's in. And we'll be back sooner than later. I've got to get back to doing this. It's been weighing on me for a long time, not doing any videos and not doing any streams. And I'll be honest with you, I try to do it and I just can't pull the trigger. I can't hit the live stream button, or I'll start recording something and I'll stutter and stammer on something, or there'll be an awkward pause where I can't get my thoughts out properly, and then I'll just shut her down. Never to upload. Right? Could be 5 minutes of an hour where I don't like, and I'm like, nope. It's done. So anyways, good to see you, Gary. Good to see you, Marie. God bless you. Take care. And we'll be back later on. For now, fare thee well. God bless.